Hi there, Scory here. This is a LiveTime training video about using LiveTime FPV, the drone racing edition of our software. If you're racing cars or motorsports or something else, this is not the video for you. We've created this specifically for if you're doing drone racing. So if you're new to drone racing and new to LiveTime, you're in the right spot. To start, you should have already created a LiveTime account. If you haven't, go to livetimescoring.com. Click the button in the upper right corner and fill it out. It's free. Be sure you select the FPV edition that you want for your account, and then you can download it off the website. So we've already downloaded and installed the software, and now I'm running it for the first time. I've already typed in my login and password, and I'm about to hit login and go. One quick note, you'll notice it says successfully connected to LiveTime servers. When we first do a login, we check to make sure you're online first. You can use LiveTime if you're offline, though. That's just fine. This is just basically to tell you that it's detected an internet connection for you already. So I'm going to go ahead and hit login, and this is going to fire right up. And when it's finished, I'm going to resize it here so we can all take a look at it. There we go. You're in the account screen. It tells you your name. There's a logo in the upper right corner if you've supplied us a logo. By default, you won't have one, but feel free to email us a logo. We'll put it on the LiveTime software for you when you log in online. It'll be on all the reports, and it'll also show on your online portal, which I'll show you in a little while. In addition, you'll also see a couple of links or pieces of information here at the top. You can see the edition you're running, when it'll expire, and the dashboard URL. With every account comes a free website that shows not only all your results after your races are over, but you can also have live broadcasted information as well. So people with their cell phones or computers can go and they can watch live your race. So you can make it just about the data, so they can look on it and they can see live laps and times that are coming through. Or you can actually do a broadcast as well and get videos and have that as well. So all of that is available to you. As you use LiveTime, it's all included. So let's get started here. We've already talked about the account. Here's some links to some training videos. Definitely check those out. The same links that are here are also on our website. If you go to livetimescoring.com and click on the training link at the top, you can see these videos as well. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can see more training videos as we go. So LiveTime begins by you having to go from left to right. So we really try to make it flow like a book when you're using the software. To begin, you're going to need to create a track. That's a location or facility that you might be racing your drones in. So I'm just going to say, let's start with my backyard. I'm going to make it an outdoor FPV. My layout changes today when I'm making this. I'll put in some ridiculous number here and hit save. And our track is set. So once the track is completed, you'll notice it's selected. You can click on it up here to go to the tracks. There's a little trail here that'll show up as you go. And there's a lot of options right here. So the first is printers. For a lot of you guys that are out in the field, you probably aren't hauling around a printer with you, but if you have a dedicated facility, you might. This is where you can set up printing to have for when you run races or you print out heats and that sort of thing. One thing that you really might want to check right away is the show frequencies on heat sheets. That will actually show the frequencies and you can print them out and color them and that sort of thing as well. Additionally, printing results here by default will print after each race as long as you select a printer from your printer list. If you also want to save results, this might be a little bit more relevant for the drone racing, you can say I want to save files here, I want to save a copy of PDF, and I could select a folder for it as well. Leave that check and it will create PDF files of your results that you could upload or put in a Dropbox or something later for racers to take a look at. The next couple items are a lot more interesting, I believe, and that is the sound effects and announcements. So LiveTime has two different ways of announcing things or playing sounds. One is sound effects. So these are your WAV files, your MP3s, your MIDI files, for those of you who like the classics, to be able to play during certain triggers. So the system will, by default, set up some of these for you. You might want to have others. You might want to go out and find your own settings here as well. But sound effects like the start of the race, that sort of thing, you can hear that. If you want laps to be counted, you can have a lap cross. If you want a special sound to play when the leader crosses, you can check that. And there's a bunch of other options. So feel free to play with them, select different files, and kind of customize it to make it your own. The additional piece here is the announcement section, where you can actually have it say things as the race goes. And there is a whole lot of settings here. So you definitely want to play around with some of this. Not only can you have it announce the race before it begins and who's in it, but you may also want to have it automatically announce things as the race is going on. So who's in the lead, how many laps have they done, how many laps are left, things like that. You can preview any of these things
3 laps left
by clicking on it, and you get an idea of what is going on. The last couple tabs here are if you have house transponders and if you want to do some records reporting. So transponders are really not relevant for pilots because you're probably not buying transponders like iLap and TrackMate and sharing them. But if you were, you could have a global area here for that. A lot of drones are going to video transmitter type decoders, so transponders really aren't relevant. LiveTime has 2 different ways to track a drone. You can do it with decoders that have transponders, so your iLap, your TrackMate, MyLapse is getting into it too. Or you have decoders that work on video frequency, which is your TBS event tracker, your Immersion RC, Delta 5, some of these things that are out there that do video. They measure the RSSI and then they do laps. And I'll show you how to set up any one of those here in the decoder section in a minute. The last section here, which I glossed over earlier, is records. Once you start doing races, you might want to go back and say, well, how many laps did we turn over the entire course of the event? Or maybe since we started using LiveTime at all, or over the last year. These are where you can run reports based on this track. So basically my backyard, I could say, okay, these are how many events and laps, etc. that I've run. So that's tracks in a nutshell. It pertains to settings that have to do with the entire track and the sound system hooked up to it and that sort of thing. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to tell the system what kind of vehicles we're going to race, and those are called classes. With drones, that's kind of a new thing, but one of the big differentiators right now is your spec class and your open class. So spec means you have specific things that you can build into your drone to fly them. And open means, hey, throw whatever you want together within reason or rules, of course, but it's a little bit more flexible. It's more of the pro level. Spec tends to be more of a beginner class or a low-cost class. But I'm just going to put in open FPV here. The next thing is color. If you start having a lot of different classes, you might want to give each class a color. There's a lot of places in LiveTime and on reports and on the website that will give it a different color, differentiate it easily, so you definitely choose that. Notes here are for putting, when you do printouts, it'll put some additional notes saying, hey, by the way, just some special notes about this class. That's also for internal use for as well. Global tracking here is for you to say, you can give it whatever crazy name you want to give it, but we're going to group these things globally. So at some point, someone can say, hey, what are all the quadcopter open FPV classes that are running in my area? Things like that. We can start grouping them together and we can start looking at more global rankings and global statistics. So definitely make sure that your class gives a proper designation here so that we can do that and make your races and your classes part of the greater group and advertise them. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save here. And once you're done, you are represented with a whole bunch of options, tons of options. Don't try to understand all of them right away. I'll point out some of the ones that make the most sense for you to focus on, but ultimately there are a lot of options that LiveTime gives you per class. And as you grow and as you work with things, you'll want to use more of them. We do split them in the beginning between race and splits settings, and I should explain that a little bit. So race settings are about what you're going to use for the finish line and really the absolute specifics of the race. So every time you do a lap, you go through the finish line or the finish gate, and it counts it. The split settings have more to do with if you want to put additional decoders and sensors at other gates around the track. LiveTime lets you set up a whole bunch of them and add a whole bunch of rules around them. So eventually there'll be things like you have to go through every gate to get to the finish line, or maybe there'll be an alternate path that's a joker lane that gives you a bonus point or a special designation, or you must go through it once a race for you to finish. So those types of things you'll be able to add to LiveTime. LiveTime also has the ability to allow you to put a whole bunch of different decoders out there from different brands, and it'll sync all of them up. So it's kind of a bring everything you bought and bring everyone else's stuff together, build a track of your dreams, and then race it in LiveTime is the idea. So as that grows, you can give some of those and put those out in the field, create splits, and do some really fun things with them. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves here. I'm going to go back to the race settings here. One more interesting thing to note. See here where it says default settings? So you set up what you'd like this class to normally run as. Hey, I will normally want to run this as a 2-minute class. I normally want to put 5 people in a race, or 4 in a race, or something. Every time you create an event and you add a class to it, it uses these settings as default. You then have the ability to tweak it for the specific event, but if 9 times out of 10 you're going to run a class a certain way, change it here so that when you add it to the event, you don't have to retype in all that information again. It's a kind of an easy way to do a one-time thing. So I'll get into more of the settings here in a bit when we talk about the events, but for now I think we're all set. So now we've told the system, hey, I've got this track outside, I'm going to be running these kind of drones. All right, now it's time to tell the system I'm ready to have an event. I'm telling people to show up and we're going to run some races here. So the next section here, left to right, is the events. So in events, I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to say, hey, this is, I'll be real original here, and I'll say, hey, this is Corey's event. You can give it a date and time. It can run over multiple days. You don't have to worry about doing something each day or anything goofy like that. You can say, I want this thing to run a whole week if you want. The time section here is really just for organization. You're going to set up the races and the heats and that sort of thing, and that really doesn't matter based on your date and time. So as you're going down here, you have a lot of options of how you want to create your event. A lot of it has to do with seating. So in LiveTime, we really base a lot of our settings based on a lot of other types of racing. So in some cases with drone racing, hey, you just run a bunch of rounds and whoever has the most points wins. And that's great, you can do that. But LiveTime has a lot of ways that you can say, I'm going to run a bunch of rounds and then I'm going to have a final round where I'm going to determine a ultimate winner. And LiveTime has a lot of rules and settings to help with that, to make it really exciting to kind of get down to the end. You can also do, some elimination things as well. And I think that's where the sport is going. So LiveTime has a lot of rules and things around that. Some of which, take a note from what MultiGP is doing, what some of the others are doing, and some of it is just, hey, a lot of other rules and options that are available in other racing, and we want to make those available to drones as well. And as LiveTime updates and we continue to put out new versions, we'll certainly listen and add new modes as needed and what you guys are using. So for each one of these things here, first of all, the type, qualify to main is what we're talking about. Hey, is like you do some rounds and then you do a final round. There's another option here called Reedy. If you wonder, hey, what does this mean? You can always hover over all these little question marks. These question marks are available throughout LiveTime. Just move your mouse over them and it'll tell you. Oh, okay, so the Reedy round here says everyone runs all classes, best overall results across all classes. So really the only reason you want to run a Reedy round is if you had like an open and a spec, and everyone showed up at your event with an open and a spec quad, and you'd run them both, and then you take the results from both and you combine them to win. Most cases you're going to leave this as default. Main seeding is saying, hey, I'm going to take all the qualifiers and I'm going to put them together into a main round. How do I want to do that? A lot of drone racing has been using combined results, like best 3 of 5 rounds for seeding. And you'll notice in some of these options, when I choose it, I get some additional options. I can tell it here, hey, I want to do a best 3 rounds here. And then the rest are tiebreakers. There's a lot more detail to show here, a lot more information down here, but honestly, as a default, you can leave the rest and we can hit save and we can proceed on to do events. At this point, once I've created an event, I see all the classes that are in the entire system on the left, and then I just drag it to the right to say, yep, I want to use this open FPV class in my event. And you'll notice that when I moved it over here, when I change that class settings to 4 pilots in 2 minutes, that's what shows up here as well. Now that I've created this event and I've told it what kind of classes I want, the next section is to say, hey, what frequencies am I going to run? I'm going to make this real easy on myself, and I'm going to use one of the predetermined profiles here. I'm just going to use raceband. I click raceband 8, and all of the frequencies that I'm going to use show up on the right here. I can give it different colors. This is really just arbitrary. These are meant to match multi-GP and to kind of create a color standard, but you could certainly adjust it as you see fit. If you also want to rearrange the order of frequencies as they're assigned, you can do that too. So basically what this says is once I create a race, when I start putting pilots into it, the first pilot is going to get R1. The second pilot is going to get R2 on down the road. There's ways to adjust this. I'll show that to you in a minute, but just to get an idea, that's what this does. Additionally, there's a section that says camera grid position. This is a bit beyond the scope of this video, but when you're doing broadcasting, we do offer tickers and overlays, and this assigns what grid position to what location. So if you want to play around with that a little bit, here's where you can do that as well. The next part you're going to see here is registrations. These are all the pilots that are registered to your event. Sadly, right now we have 0 pilots registered because we haven't even created any yet, but eventually we'll fill this back up and you can come here and reference it. There's some reports you could look at and things as well. LiveTime also offers an ability to import pilots into the event. There's some templates and things to do that as well. You can export results, and then all the race results you'd ever want from the event are listed here. You'll notice a lot of things are in red right now because you can't run them because we don't have any races that we've run yet and we don't have any results. But this is what you can always go back to, select the event and go back here to see it. Okay, so now that I've created my event, it's time to add some pilots into the system and to register them into the event. So I'm going to hit pilots, and I'm going to put my name in here. If I type in a name and hit enter and it's not found in the search list, the system will automatically think you want to create the pilot. You can hit enter again really quick and it'll immediately create it. So a couple of quick keys. And you'll notice that now I've created a pilot myself. He's there and it's selected, and now I can start choosing from the classes. So yep, I'm going to run this race. I can also say I paid. If you're using the TBS event tracker, you can also tell the system, yes, this person is flying HD Connex as well, which is important for that particular decoder. I'm going to put a few more names into the system here. Register them here. Okay, you're going to notice that I created a bunch of pilots, but I forgot to register Shannon into the event. That means that there's no little trophy icon, which corresponds to this trophy icon for the events here. So if you ever want to know, hey, here's all my pilots, which ones are in the event I have selected today, just look for the trophy icon here. I'll click registered, and now he's there. You also notice there's a little number that's accumulating here. It's telling me how many people registered in the event. Also, I know how many people paid for it. There's only 1. Okay, 2. I can start kind of going through here and track this. So it gives you a couple pieces of information here to track it. If you're running a race that uses transponders, now here's the time to also put in the transponder. So let's say I had an ILAP transponder and it was these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I can type it in here, hit add. Now the transponder is ready to go, and it will recognize that transponder, not only for me, but it will also associate it to the Open FPV class. So if that transponder goes through the gate, it'll say, oh, this is Corey's Open FPV drone. And you'll see that later as well. There's a lot more to cover here in the pilots, but not really a whole lot for getting a race started. There's additional profile information. You put a whole bunch of demographics, email information. There's some membership data here you can store. Also, if you want to know all their practice and race history, you can go in here. If that pilot ever comes to you later and says, hey, can I get that result from such and such a race I did 2 weeks ago? You can definitely go in here and find it. But okay, now I've got 4 pilots in this event. Just to point out, I'm going to go back to the event section and go to registrations. Aha, here are the 4 entries, and here's who they are. And look, there's a transponder, and I can see that all 4 of my guys have paid to be a part of this event. So I have my event, I have my pilots in place. now it's time for me to start creating some races. But first, if I wanted to do just some open practice, the next section is practice. So here's the whole practice session, and there's a lot you can do here. But the main thing to keep in mind is you got to go to practice, you got to turn it on, and then now anything that goes across your gate will start showing up, and you'll start accumulating laps. Big problem though, we haven't set up a decoder yet, so nothing's going to be detected. So probably now is a good time to stop what we're doing and set up our decoder, because we could start at this point getting practice in place if we wanted to. So I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to point out now all the icons that are up on the upper right side. So these are all things that are going on in the background while LiveTime is running. And the first icon is decoders. By the way, you can hover your mouse over any of these icons and you'll see a little tip for what they're all about. So I'm going to click on decoders, and I'm going to go here, and it says, okay, here's my track. There is a slot, and you can add and subtract slots. So like I can hit add, add, add. So right now I've set up that I want 4 iLap decoders, right? One is a finish line, and here's some splits. That's a whole other thing that I can go into, but I'll just set up one decoder for now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select, I have an immersion lap RF puck hooked up through USB right now. So I'm going to select immersion RF, and then under the connection tab, I'm going to choose USB serial, and under the COM port, make sure it's selected, and there you go, it went green. You can tell your decoder is hooked up to your system if it goes green like this. You can also go to the communication tab, and it will literally show you all the raw information, the heartbeat, the passing records, everything there. You can see a 5769 already came over as a lap as well. You see the video frequencies come through. If you're using one that's got a transponder, it'll show you transponder number instead of the video frequency in this column. For any decoder you're setting up, there's also a number of additional pieces you can look at. Information will tell you firmware and serial number information. Settings will tell you specific settings, and this changes based on the decoder. So for the lap RF, you can go in here and say, okay, there's 4 transponders or 4 antennas that are fired up. I can make adjustments, and they send it right back to the device. I can even, for some of these, read my signal strength as they pass. And I'm going to attempt here to put in a, I just plugged in a inductrix, and you can see it jumped a little bit. Here, I'll turn this on as well. Okay, so I have a real high level here. I'm going to unplug my inductrix, and it's back down. So this is actually measuring as we go. So feel free to play around with this per the decoder, and we'll have more specific posts and videos and training around these decoders as they go. So definitely, if you haven't already, go to the LiveTime FPV Facebook page, or group rather, get yourself added to it, and join the discussion, and we will definitely be posting more as more decoders come out. So now we have a decoder working real well, so we can kind of get back. We could be running practice at this point. I'll actually click on practice, turn it on, and just to demonstrate, I'll plug back in my drone here for a second.
Unknown pilot.
And you can see a bunch
Unknown
of
pilot. Unknown pilot.
frequencies came up.
Unknown
I didn't bother to tune anything yet, so I got a little bit of a broad spectrum there. Obviously, if you plug in a drone, it really hits on all the waves. So anyways, I'm going to close this out, and enough about that. Okay, so now it's time to move on, and let's create some actual races. So I'm going to hit heat and main, and in this area, this is the only option I have so far is to actually create a round. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this, and this kind of puts you in a wizard where you create new rounds as you go. So the idea in LiveTime is you create a round with races. You finish all those races, then you come back and create the next round. Complete all those races, come back and create another round, and just keep going. And the reason you might want to do that is because every time you create a round, when you go to create another round, you might want to use the previous round's results to resort or put your best guys together if you'd like. If you don't, you can always just copy the round and create another one too. So there's nothing that keeps you from doing that. I'm going to create a round here, a qualifying round. I'm going to tell it to use random order. There's a bunch of other options here too, but we'll just kind of leave the defaults, and I'm going to hit generate. And you can see what the system did. It created one race because we told the system, hey, create races with 4 guys each, and I have 4 guys. So, and it actually assigned them frequencies. Now, if I don't like the frequencies I'm seeing here, you can always right-click them, change the frequency, and now look, Casey's on R5. I'll change me to be on R6 as we go. There's a lot of different options here. Something to kind of point out is that LiveTime in some screens has these things called flyouts. They're little buttons that are vertical, and they make options pop in and out. So this setup pops in, setup pops out. I can change, I can click on pilots here, I can click on reports here, and different things pop up. I can pop it back in, get the full screen that I want here, but just some navigation tips there. Now, if I want to take somebody out, I can just pop open the pilots piece, and I can say, hey, Shannon, you're not going to be part of this race, and move them out. Then I could go to setup, and I could hit add race, and I could create a second race, and I could click on pilots, and I can move Shannon into it. So this pilot flyout is always a list of all the pilots that are registered for the event, but that are not yet in any races. So let me go back to pilots for a minute, and I'm going to create, and I'm just going to create another name here. I'm going to register them, and then if I go back to heat main, you'll notice now when I click the pilots, there's Bobby just sitting there. He's registered, but he's not part of any race yet. Okay, now I can drag him in here. You have the ability to delete, to renumber. I can drag and drop people here from one race to another, drag them back. So you can really reorder it and change it however you'd like. You'll probably notice as I'm changing this, that this cloud up here is changing color. This is the cloud sync, and this is what keeps everything that you're doing in LiveTime updated on your Live FPV portal. We haven't talked a whole lot about that yet, but let me just discuss it briefly right now. When you create an account, we create a whole portal for you online to be able to have all your results and things as well, and we keep it in sync live. So the moment you do something in the system to trigger it, we're updating Live FPV right away so that everyone that's on your site can do it. You can tell everyone what your site is. This is just a test account, so it's LRC Test 3, but what your account is when you signed up, it was whatever name you gave it, .livefpv.com. So that is like your portal, your place that everyone can go to get all the results for everything you're doing in LiveTime as you go. Additionally, if you are part of MultiGP, and we have a separate video for that, so check that out, we will also sync all of your event information back up to MultiGP when you finish. So people can go to that and watch that as well to get live results as things are happening as well. Okay, so definitely you want to watch this because you want it to be green. If you're offline, by the way, it will remember all of the changes, and if later you log into LiveTime while you're online, it will then sync and get everything up to date. So if you go out in the middle of the woods where there's no internet whatsoever and you run your entire event with LiveTime, the moment you get home, plug it into the internet and fire up LiveTime, and LiveTime will make sure that everything gets up to your Live FPV portal. If you also have a phone or something that's got a cell connection that you can hotspot real quick, hotspot it, let LiveTime sync for a few minutes, and then turn it back off. You know, do it between rounds or when you have a break. You can definitely keep people up to date that way as well. Okay, enough of that. I'll go back to the heat main. We've already created our races here. So now we can actually, left to right, go to the race screen, and here's the actual race ready to go. Again, there's a whole bunch of different flyouts you can use here. So definitely experiment and take a look at what's there. Probably the biggest thing to note right away is this settings flyout. Here's where you can make last-minute changes before the race begins to adjust how the race will work. So if you wanted that race to be 3 minutes instead of 2, you can adjust it right here. If you want the race to be about laps, so you can say, hey, I want this to be a 6-lap race. And when I start it, I'll do 6 laps, and the first person to finish 6 laps, that's the winner. You can set it that way too. Some other big things, there's a minimum lap time. There's a limit to the amount of laps that you can have in here as well. And there's also this thing called staggered start and heads up. So let me explain that, because for those that are new to doing timing, this is a big deal. Staggered starts mean that everyone takes off, but their individual clock doesn't start until they hit the finish line for the first time. So if you want everyone to do a 2.5-minute race, but you want to kind of give guys a little bit of room so that they're not like bunching up on one another or stagger them, That's where the name comes from. Staggered start is here. So use this, and their clock will start with stagger. If, however, you want to be more of a heads up, hey, start and everyone takes off and goes, heads up is more of a traditional type racing where you start and everyone's clock begins at the same time. A couple of different things about that. When you do a heads up race, the first time it hits the finish line, it's going to use this delay. So you can tell this, if you can tell the system, hey, I don't want to count any laps for the first 15 seconds, you can do that. And then after that 15 seconds, you'll hit your first lap, and then the minimum lap time will start being enforced every lap after that. So in most cases, the delay tends to be a little bit longer than the actual minimum lap itself, because the delay counts your whole shot plus the whole first lap before the minimum starts up. There's also some additional options for doing some delays here. We're doing some additional adjustments with the software specifically around these options, so stay tuned. We'll definitely make some announcements as we go here as well. Okay, so with that said, it's time to run a race. Now, we've already established a decoder connection here, so we could do decoders. However, I do want to teach you one other thing that you can do. With all the flyouts pop back in on the left, so now looking at this full listing and not having any of the flyouts on the left, you can use your keyboard to simulate laps as they go. So there's, for the drone numbers 1, 2, and 3, I can hit 1, 2, and 3 on my keyboard, and you'll see it simulates exactly the same rules as if they crossed. So we're saying, hey, we're doing a heads-up race. We're not going to count for the first 8 seconds, and then we're going to have 5-second minimum laps, and then I'm going to hit start. Okay, so imagine everyone's taking off right now and going through the finish for the first time. Everything flashes red because technically we're ignoring that, but it is counting it as the whole shot. After that point, okay, we're starting to do some laps. Okay, I'm going to do a quick lap. Oh, that's too short. It throws it out. Okay, now we're past the minimum lap time and we're starting to do laps. I'll let some time go by. We'll do some more laps. Let's say that Casey crashes out. I'm not going to give Casey any more laps. All right, Corey, good a lap. Okay, you can see it resorted it. Scully sorted it. Casey's now on the bottom. All right, I'm doing some more laps. You'll notice that after a certain point, when Casey doesn't cross, it goes red. The system sorts him to the bottom and says, this guy looks like he crashed out. Okay, someone has crossed the finish line with the laps done. They turn gray because they're done. Scully did gray as well. Casey's crashed out. All right, I'm done. I can click finish. The system will finish the race and we're all set. At this point, once the race is finished, I can clear the results if I want to reset the whole race. I can edit the results. I can click edit here and I can edit values like, well, actually Casey got a 4th lap before he crashed. I can hit done and that would save the new settings so you can make quick adjustments. If you want to view the results, you can click here. It'll actually show you a nice on-screen report that will you could then print, or you could save to PDF or images, post it online. Shows your logo in the upper left corner, and some information here as well. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit just to show a little bit more about what happened here. I'll hit back. I can print, and I can view round results from here. Now, if I have a second race, I can just hit the arrow up to go to that race, and I'll go to race 2. I can hit the down arrow to go back down. I can also use this drop down to go right to the quick race that I want. Something you might not have noticed, but it happened, is that this race, as it was running, was actually also being broadcast live. That's because you'll see this icon here in the upper right corner, this green icon here, that is the Live FPV Beacon. You'll notice that it automatically is set to start broadcasting. So the moment you start a race or you start practice, the system will start throwing data out there on the live site. I'm going to click on the website here right now just to give you an idea. I'm going to pause the live video here, but see how Corey, Scully, and Casey have their laps here listed already? If someone was watching, they would actually see this data change as the race progresses. You'll also notice that when you go to race results, and you click on race results and go to Open FPV, here are those race results that just happened. Here's a nice graph of the laps that went by as you went, and some other statistics as well. I can click on the dashboard and it takes me back to my main homepage here as well. Shows a little bit more information about me and the address, a map so people can find where you're at, all that data that you have here as well. Okay, now that we've taken a look at the Live FPV page and we've seen the results here, I'm back in the LiveTime system. This race is completed. I can arrow up here and I can go ahead and start and run the next race. Once that's complete, I could click on Heat Main, I could go back and I could create my next round, and I could continue creating rounds and races in the system. So definitely continue to work with that and experiment with that. Really the only thing left that I'll point out here, a couple little odds and ends to continue on here, is that there is this button down here, it's called Timetable. Once you create an event, you can click on it. You can switch from timetable to countdowns, and you can tell the system, I would like you to automatically advance races for me. I'd like you to automatically start. I'd like you to automatically finish races. So feel free to use some of these options as well. Once you set them up and click back to the race, you'll see some of these timers and things work. Additionally, there are some other icons I didn't touch on yet. The data option is where you can go to take a look at all your past races and really troubleshoot your database or decoder data. We have all the raw data here that you can look at, so definitely check that out. The race editor is a nice addition where you can go and you can see all of the specific laps. If there's decoder data, you can look at it here too, so definitely check that out. And just the general settings piece has some nice options as well. The mixer section here is specifically interesting if you want to change the voice.
Welcome to LiveTime Scoring Engine. This is a speech test.
You can also speed it up and slow it down.
Welcome to LiveTime Scoring Engine. This is a speech test.
So you can tweak these things for your own benefit. If you need any questions, or if you have any questions and you need some help, you can also click on the help icon in the upper right. Feel free to use our phone number, our support page. You can send us error logs. You can install TeamViewer if you're interested in letting us remote in and helping you out as well. Yeah, and that's really the long and short of it. So I'm hoping that this walkthrough gets you started, gets you an idea of how to do some things, start you running races. Feel free to give us feedback. Go on the Facebook site, as we said before. Use the other support options that we have available here. We hope you love LiveTime. We look forward to your feedback and additional options that you think of that we can make the product better. And thank you for your interest.